I guess, iteration as to what could possibly be there. We've had several conversations about possibly selling. We had several conversations about not. We have some conversation now about, possibly ownership and all these things. So we have to sort out some things prior to being able to come back and offer you up a solid recommendation based on that property.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, hearing what our Director of Parks and Rec is saying here, what we're asking them to do, if they don't have some sort of direction from this commission, then they'll just be swimming like a fish out of water, and they won't be going anywhere. And so, what I would say is, I don't know. This may have happened before I got on. I don't know if there's a will to sell. I know I don't want to, and so perhaps at some point we need to give some guidance to Parks and Rec from a commission standpoint in terms of whether we want to sell that property, whether we don't want to sell it, look specifically for keeping it, getting it fixed up, working with the appropriate entities so that Augusta Richmond County can thrive from that standpoint. But to not have the proper guidance, we may be sending them on a wild goose chase.
I would agree with you, Commissioner. That piece of property is a vital piece of property, not only to our economic engine, but of course we have two storied events, one being the Ironman and then the other regatta event. So at some point we need to make a decision as this body as to how we're going to proceed to make those improvements. Thank you. Next, the chair recognizes the commissioner from the 8th, Commissioner Garrett.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one question for you, Director McDowell. What can be done immediately to get the rowing club back into their space safely?
I'm not sure if there's an immediate fix. Because if you correct some of the concerns that were raised on the analysis, then it's going to bring about some other things that you would need to do in concert with that. And looking at the cost estimate associated with mitigating some of those concerns, we have to be cautious that we're not doing things 2 and 3 times over and over again just for a quick fix. So rather than taking the quick fix approach, I think we have to have a holistic discussion about what we want to do with the facility, what needs to happen based on available funds as well. So we'll be trying to get some answers to those questions before we can say a quick fix to get them back in that facility, because there's some serious concerns that we have, and we don't want to put our staff or anybody else in any type of harm's way.
So in reference to upcoming events that they need that facility or a similar facility, do we have any options for them to be able to use for storage?
To the capacity of what they have, that probably answers no. We have been working to find other facilities that we could possibly use to help them with some of their needs. But as of right now, we don't have anything in our inventory that's compatible to what they need for the equipment that they have.
And I think this is the first time that most of us up here have heard about the water main break during the holidays. I just hope that this is 2 meetings in a row, I think, where we've all been surprised by water breaks and the amount of repairs that it takes to clean those up. So hopefully in the future we can be kept more abreast on these events in our facilities.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 1st, Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question. I think that this may need to be something that we discuss in our executive session under real estate, because if I'm not mistaken, and I'm just a junior attorney, I'm not the main attorney. I guess what I'm saying is we never made a decision. So with that, again, we never made the decision to sell. That was something that was presented, and it wasn't presented in an official manner. And so if we can just get that 2-week report back, I guess, about how much that would cost, and then give the commission an opportunity to decide whether or not we want to maintain that as a property in our own coffers. Because if I'm not mistaken, there was never a vote to take that out of our coffers. And so I would think that we will still be operating under the understanding that we are going to maintain ownership.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director McDowell, the boathouse is definitely in a bad state. We all know that, I think. But I would ask that when you meet with the individuals, if there is a temporary fix or something we could do from a storage component to help, at least in the meantime, I think that would be a help. Yes, something, portable building or something, as Commissioner Mason, like we need to help them out. We need to make sure that, the portalets out there, it's not the best thing, but if there's any other options that we do have from our standpoint, like we just need to support them as much as we can on temporary fix, because I think the boathouse is a big ask. I think that it probably needs to start over, frankly, from what I hear, from everything that I hear, how bad it is. We don't utilize it. I think it's important that we listen to the Augusta Sports Council on opportunities that they are presented based on Langley Pond and the river and what the economic impact can be if we get it to a state for utilization. And then this body determine whether that's an asset that we want to put those resources behind to fix or not, because I think it's a big ask for this boathouse to be fixed. So
I appreciate those comments, Commissioners. To your point, that is exactly what we've been working on. We always have to be cognitive of liability as well as access based upon their needs in terms of being close to the river for the equipment that they have. So we want to make sure that if we put them in a facility that's compatible, that's conducive, but also that's safe and secure from a liability standpoint as well. So we're cognitive of all those things as we try to work through those decisions.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDowell. It's been brought to my attention that unfortunately the boathouse is not going to be able to be used by anybody anytime soon until we fix them. So we're going to have to come up with a temporary solution for the Augusta Rowing Club or some sort of solution outside of the boathouse. So obviously this conversation changes to how we can accommodate them to make sure that they're able to, one, get their storage needs met, and then two, so we could potentially position ourselves for the future to get them either back in the boathouse or back into something that's close to the river. So as this body, that's a decision that we're going to have to make. But Mr. McDowell, thank you for being here, sir. Any suggestions that you can provide as far as storage that's in close proximity to the boathouse will be greatly appreciated. Is there anything else that's in close proximity that?
Not at this time in our inventory, but again, we'll have those conversations with facilities as well as the administrator and see can we offer up something. But currently, we don't have anything in our coffers that we could offer up in terms of recommendation.
All right. Thank you. I don't see anybody else in the queue. She's Ms. McKnight?
Yeah.
Commissioner from Third,
Yeah.
you're up.
We've been talking about this since I came on the commission, and it seems like that really the boathouse, it continues to sit until it's going to fall in, and we continue to kick, repairs down the road. And I say we've got to put some money or do something or either sell it. We can't continue just to talk and not get it done. We talk and we don't get it done. So we need to do something, and I mean fairly quick. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. McDowell, thank you, sir. Ms. Buckaloo, thank you for being here. We will be in touch. Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Call your attention to our consent agenda, which consists of items 1 through 24, items 1 through 24. For the benefit of any objectors to our alcohol petitions, once those petitions are read, would you please signify your objection by raising your hand once again when the petition is read. I call your attention to item number 1. It's a request for a new location for an on-premise consumption liquor, beer, and wine license to be used in connection with Jamaica Way, located at 2650 Tobacco Road. Are there any objectors? Item number 2, well, that's it. We only have the one alcohol petition with no objectors. Our consent agenda consists of items 1 through 24. And Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, since we added the 2 appointments, they are district appointments, and they usually are placed under consent. So would that be okay with no objection?
No objections?
Okay.
Thank you.
So items 2 and 3 will be on our consent agenda. Consist of items 1 through 24 and items 2 and 3 on the addendum agenda.
All right, let's see a few people in the queue here. First, I'm going to recognize the commissioner from the second, Commissioner Pillion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull item number 7 for questions.
All right. Commissioner from the eighth.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull item 16. There's a slight change to the way the motion needs to read. And I'd like to add item 25 to consent.
All right. Next, I see Commissioner from the 10th, Commissioner Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add these two items to the consent under administrative service. Item number 28, public service safety. Item number 29. Nobody has an objection.
Okay, we're doing item number 28 to the consent. I think was there objection to 29 going on consent? Okay, so that
comes off.
so our consent agenda would be items 1 through 26, with pulling item number 17, Commissioner Pulliam.
Number 7.
16, Commissioner Garrett.
Yep.
Adding items 25 from the agenda, item 2 and 3 from our consent agenda. 28 on the consent.
All right. I see Commissioner Pulliam.
Yes, I have a question for item number 28.
Number 28.
He's been added, right?
Okay. So we're taking that off. Okay.
Did you say we're not putting 26 on consent?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
All right. Commissioner Garrett.
Motion to approve as stated.
What?
Okay, that's Mr. Garrett, and I didn't get the second on that.
Ms. Bonner,
Mr. Shaw. Okay.
question, Ms. Bonner?
Yes.
I saw on the screen 28
Yeah.
is on consent. It's coming. Okay, I see it's off now. Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner McKnight.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was busy writing these numbers down. Did you say we were going to discuss 29? Is that correct?
We are.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We are.
Yes.
Okay, that's Mr. Garrett and Mr. Franum on our consent agenda.
All right. So we have a motion. We got a
Are we
second?
voting, sir?
Yes, ma'am. We're voting.
Okay, Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am. I wasn't sure this was going.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
okay, Mr. Guilfoyle,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mason,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pulliam,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Bobby Williams. Okay, our consent agenda passes unanimously. You want to go to
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
29 now? You want to do 29 now?
Yes. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk.
Okay.
Please continue.
Okay. Item 29, call your attention. A motion to approve a request from the Richmond County Sheriff's Office for emergency funding for purchase, repair of outdated food service and laundry equipment in the amount of $486,872.90.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you for being here today, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. We're ready.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Right now in our jail facility, we are in a state of an emergency when it comes to our laundry and our kitchen equipment. Most of it is outdated to the fact that we cannot no longer use it. We are now outsourcing laundry equipment. We are now serving dishes on styrofoam because we have no dishwasher. Our mixer, we're mixing food for 1,100 inmates by hand in some cases. Again, right now, we're in desperate need of these outdated supplies to the fact that our national accreditation is in jeopardy because of these items being in disrepair. Right now, we currently are maintaining about 1,100 inmates per day. Again, you're trying to feed those 3 times a day. You're trying to do laundry for those individuals with no services. You can, just to give you how state that we are in, that we've tried to tape up everything, we tried to fix everything, but some of the equipment is so outdated that there are no longer parts for it. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, of our 12 washers and dryers, 8 of them were installed in 1997. They're 26 years old, but we tried to maintain them up for 26 years. 4 of them are 13 years old, and the life expectancy is 5 to 8 years on those type of manufacturing equipment. But again, we maintain equipment for 26 years, and it's not working, to the fact that we've had 2 fires within our jail based on the faulty equipment, and to the fact now, because of the situation becoming dangerous, causing a unrest among inmates, we're getting complaints from relatives about the food, the laundry, being clean, the towels, the sheets, to the fact that it's now affecting jail security, and also we're in jeopardy of some kind of foodborne pathogen because of the cleanliness of our kitchen and our utensils. So right now I have spoken with Central Services in reference to these maintenance items. They've indicated that they do not have that kind of money in their budget. I also spoke to the administrator about this request. She indicated that she possibly had a funding source, and she's well aware of her time in Central Services, the state of repair that our laundry facility is in. Again, I'll let her speak to that, but she did tell me that there is a potential funding source to allocate my request for this amount of money. It is an emergency request because, like right now, we're doing everything by hand and outsourcing. Give you an idea right now for styrofoam plates, because we can't wash dishes, we're spending $1,000 a week just on styrofoam. And then you're talking about cleanup and washing, and again, it's now becoming civil unrest in our jail because the inmates now are revolting back because we can't get clean clothes, can't get clean linen in our facility, and again, trying to maintain 1,100 inmates 24/7 today. So now we are, like I say, in a state of emergency, and we come to this commission for this emergency request. I also have my director of my jail facility if you have any specific questions about specific equipment, but that is a general overview of where we are right now.
Thank you, Sheriff. First in the queue, we have Commissioner Williams from the 5th.
How you doing, Sheriff?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good. Okay, you got a list of items for food service, laundry. Has Central Service been in there and looked at that, or how'd you compile $486,000?
Yes, sir. Central Service has been an intricate part of it. Again, we came for the commission last year, and we contracted out a vendor to handle the maintenance over a period of time. Just the fact that stuff is so far in disrepair that it says it's going to take them a year to even get things back up to par before they can even start preventive maintenance. Like I said, my director is out. Looked at the price sourcing of the equipment that we have, and he can give you a better understanding of exactly how we come to which price, if you want to go individually, or what price of equipment do you want to go by individually, buy what equipment in a certain price, or
individually. Just give us a good idea of what you're dealing with. Where's the bulk of the money coming from laundry services or food, or what is it coming from?
It's going to be basically split about in half. Just to replace the washing machines and dryers, $256,000. These are huge commercial type washing machines and dryers. So that would be about half of the money right there. We have in the kitchen, we are replacing only the items that have to be replaced. We have other stuff, but they're mixing with whisks instead of having planetary mixers. And in that, the dishwasher itself is $119,000. The dishwasher is 11 foot long, 6 foot tall, 4 foot wide, and it does what we call the gorilla trays, which are the heavy duty insulated trays that we have to serve the food on. Right. We've looked at other models. They can't handle anything that big, and it's $20,000 to install it. So we're not coming up here just asking for money for the sake of asking for it. We're asking for the money to replace what we have to have.
Yes, sir. I understand. My dishwasher just was like 500, so 100 and something. Wow. Mr. Sheriff, I think everybody else up here has the same question that I have. Do you have any monies anywhere?
No, sir, we don't. That's why I'm standing here today.
I got you. Well, you need 486. If you got 150, that'll help us somewhere.
Well,
so
I spoke with the administrator yesterday, and she advised me that she has a potential funding source to cover this under the capital. Again, I'll let the administrative office speak for themselves, but they tell me the impression that the money is there, the funding source is there.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask, Ms. Jackson?
Yes, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor, members of the commission. I can confirm that our office will allocate $500,000 from the upcoming capital allocation budget towards this expenditure.
Okay. Capital allocation budget?
Yes, sir. The annual capital allocation for capital needs. Ms. Dowse has confirmed that she has identified the amount of funds to go towards this purchase.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve, but I see you got some other folks.
I'll second it.
All right. So, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and we have a second, but there's a few other people in the queue.
Now, we're talking specifically about the capital allocation budget. That's the first time I heard of that one. So if we can get it out of the capital allocation budget, so we make it a motion to approve.
We have.
Absolutely. So that's part of the budget, capital allocation budget.
Yes, sir.
I've said that 3 times.
Capital allocation budget.
Yeah, because I've never heard of that one, but that's a good one.
All right. Chair recognizes the commissioner from the first, Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. I see that you have a list of itemized like cost. Is that what that is that you have in your hand that you're reading off of?
It's a cheat sheet, but yes.
Okay, and only thing I'm asking, I'm in favor of this. Can we submit some type of itemized cost analysis to the clerk so that we can submit it into the record? There wasn't any type of support and documentation on the request, so we can just get that submitted. I think that would be helpful
I
as well.
presented the whole proposal to the administrator. She has a copy of it, and I'm
She
sure
does,
her
okay.
office can distribute it to you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. It's on the floor.
Mr. Williams and Ms. Scott
Yeah, and
to approve
$500,000 to be
for the purchase of emergency funding. Okay. Mr. Franham?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. Guilfoyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Mason?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight?
Yes.
Ms. Pulliam?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Bobby Williams? Yes, ma'am. The motion is unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff, for being here. You have a great day. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, let's proceed.
Okay. We will go down top to bottom, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay. Item number 7 is a motion to approve the Planning Commission working on a sustainability and design standards for potential incorporation into the zoning ordinance. Ms. Pulliam asked this.
All right.
Good afternoon.
Gentlemen, hold on just a second. Thank you. Mr. Laney.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I have a question, Director Delaney. Thank you for coming up. As it pertains to the design portion of this ordinance, is it going to be like an aesthetic type ordinance? And if so, will it be area specific? For instance, for architectural design, would it be specific to Old Town versus Turpin Hill versus South Augusta?
All right. Well, this item is before you because the Planning Commission, after reviewing the applications that come in, have noticed that if you go back and look at projects that were installed or completed over the last 3 to 7 years, we have concerns about their ability to sustain and weather the next 20 years. What we are looking at and what the Planning Commission is asking staff to look at is to come back to you with a set of potential guidelines that would help with the sustainability and the quality of what's installed. This would not be historic district specific. It would not be specific to a certain portion or character area of the community. It would be an overall look at, particularly, I'll say, an emphasis on higher density. But one of the things the Planning Commission's biggest concern was, are the projects that are going on the ground, what are they going to look like in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And can we make some recommendations to you all to ensure that what gets built can last?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. You answered my question.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the Commissioner from the third.
I say we go ahead and motion to approve this.
Second.
So, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second.
Yes, sir.
We're prepared to vote.
Okay. Mr. Franham?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. Guilfoyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Mason?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pulliam?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams? Yes, ma'am. Okay, that motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam. Let's move to the next
Item
item.
number 16. Motion to approve authorized implementation of Exhibit A, Section E listed items recommended by Engineering and Environmental Services Director, Mr. Garrett. Ask that this be pulled.
Commissioner Garrett?
Thank you. During committee meetings, I misread the motion that is currently stated in front of us, so I need to restate the motion to make sure that the staff has clarity in how to move forward. So this will be a motion to approve and authorize implementation of attached Exhibit A, listed action items, and to authorize Engineering and Environmental Services Director to negotiate the terms of a 2-year extension of the waste hauler contract with Waste Management, which was approved on January 3rd, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so we have a motion and a second. The motion was by?
Mr. Garrett and Mr. Franham.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're prepared to vote.
Oh,
Wait a minute. My apologies. Commissioner from the 5th, Commissioner Williams.
just want to ask Mr. Brandon Garrett, is this just really doing the amendment that we were talking about? Because I'm trying to follow you on this.
This was a recommendation from the administrator, Mr. Bobby Williams.
And Mr. Bobby Williams, to do what?
As stated, basically, it's the same thing that was discussed in the administrator's office at the meeting that you and I attended.
So we're just amending?
That's correct.
I don't know why they include you. All right, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Madam Clerk, we're prepared to vote. We have a motion. We have a second.
Okay.
Wait a
Mr.
second.
Franham,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Guilfoyle,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mason,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pulliam,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's continue.
Okay. That will take us to item number 26. Mr. Mayor, let me ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll just go to item number 27 first, and then we'll go to admin costs. Ms. Delaney.
Ms. Delaney.
We've got a change in status here. We're going to call item number 27. Is Ms. Walton in, or are you going to handle it?
Handling that
You're handling that one? Okay.
All right.
All right.
Item 27.
We're on to 27 first.
All right, good afternoon again. We are looking at alcohol application 23-05. It's an application for retail packaged beer and wine by the business Avion Investment. This application has been reviewed by the Planning and Development Department and the Sheriff's Department, and we are recommending approval. The applicant is here. If the applicant could come forward.
Okay.
Come forward, sir. Thank you.
Can you ask if there are any objectors? Okay.
Yes. Are there any members of the audience that object to this alcohol petition at 601 Bransford Road? Hearing none, the applicant can give his name and home address.
Yes, sir.
Yes, this is Upendra Brahmbhatt, 3145 Shadywood Circle, Lawrenceville, Georgia, 30044.
Thank you, sir.
Motion second.
So, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. We're prepared to vote.
Mr. Franham?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. Guilfoyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mason?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pulliam?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Bobby Williams. That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, sir, for being here. Have a great day. Madam Clerk, let's go back to number 26.
Item number 26 is the request for concurrence with the Planning Commission to approve with conditions by Beasley Development on behalf of the Georgia Children's Home, requesting a rezoning from a Zone A agriculture and a Zone R11 family residential to a Zone R1D1 family residential, affecting property located at 3630 Windsor Spring Road, 3047 Manchester Drive, and parts of 3596 Windsor Spring Road with conditions.
So we'll jump right in. In regards to the 3 parcels for application 23-03, we have been before you last year on this particular these particular parcels, and we're back again. One of the things that had caused a point of contention in general was traffic. They have been trying to maneuver and figure out ways in which they can make the topography and the traffic and the street network that is being proposed work. At this time, they have gone back to the Planning Commission with 354 lots. Those 354 lots that they are proposing range in width from 50 feet up to 80 feet. That's about 15%. Only 15% of all of the 354 lots would be about 50 feet wide. Everything else will be larger than that. With that being said, they are installing sidewalks on both sides of the street. They are not going to build any attached family units. Everything's going to be single family detached. There will be a gazebo, benches, and things of that nature that they'll have to put in halfway through the project. They are completing a traffic study. They have worked with the traffic engineer in order to develop a potential plan. At this point, what we have been made aware of is that there's still concerns from the community in regards to the development. In particular, this application is looking at just the rezoning. We are not delving into the variance because that goes through a different process. So the applicant has asked us to consider the rezoning so that they can make the necessary moves from a financial standpoint to close on property, so that they can get a general consensus on this is a good way to go. So if you think of this as the order of operations, so to speak, you contract the land, you get an option on it, and then you see if you can get the zoning before you go and you buy the parcels that are ancillary or that might be needed in order to gain more access. So with that being said, the Planning Commission has recommended approval with 11 conditions, and I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. There's a couple of commissioners in the queue, but is there anybody from any neighborhoods?
Are we going to ask for objectors, sir? Is that
Yes, ma'am. We're going to ask for any objectors.
Will you please stand? Ms. Delaney and Attorney Brown, can you get the count for the record, please? Those that are in objection.
Okay.
Sam's over here.
Yeah, I'm going to ask that. Is there a spokesperson for any objectors? Is there any?
41. Do we have supporters? Okay, you can have your seat.
You have your seat.
Are there any supporters of the planning petition request?
All right, I see one supporter. All right, I'm going to give both you two supporters. I'm going to give both of you guys a chance to speak before I go through the queue with the commission. So, sir, come up. If you would, for the record, state your name and address. You have 5 minutes.
Samuel Walker, 3754 Bansbury Place, Hesper, Georgia, 30815. And I'm here to ask the commissioner to keep this parcel at zone at R1A and not R1AD. And this would solve most of our problem if you can keep it at R1A instead of R1AD. Thank you.
Sir, can you come back? There's a couple of questions from the commission, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Question on the floor is, what is the reason for you asked that? The
reason I asked that, it makes a lot bigger. R1AD, what you call those homes, workforce home. We talked to the developer, and he informed us that the lot would be 40 feet. Now he has changed it to 50. Would be 1,700 square feet with a 4-bedroom occupancy. To us, on a 40-foot lot, even though he said 50, when you look at the variance of that lot, it still would be 40 feet, not 50, and 1,700 square feet at $250,000 all the way up to $290,000. That is going to be impossible for anyone to purchase a 1,700 square foot house like that. This is nothing more than a cover for workforce home.
Thank you, sir. Being the applicants present, can you come forward, sir, if you will? For the record, state your name, address, and we're going to give you 5 minutes before we get into the
Thank you.
commissioners. Thank you, sir.
My name is Joseph Galino, 7009 Evans Town Center Boulevard, Evans, Georgia. The lots were always 50, not 40, whatever Mr. Walker was saying. They were always 50. They were in my report as 50. We've been through this, and I have presented it. This was presented to Planning Commission, and the objection was going through Manchester. That was the main connection. That's why it was denied the first time. We went back and we reworked it with engineering and planning and came up with some options that planning and engineering were accepting, and that's what it was. One was a traffic signal that we would be paying for at Manchester and Tobacco Road, modifying the Windsor Spring entrance, providing a potential exit, another connection to, I believe that's Cross Creek Road. We presented that went through. Then it came before you at the last meeting. 2 hours before that meeting, I got a call from the Alliance to meet with them because they had issues. Now it was no longer just the connection to Manchester. Now it was, they wanted a pool. They wanted a clubhouse. They wanted these lots to be 100 feet wide. There were other things coming up 2 hours before I present to you. And 3 of the commissioners sat in on that. So I met with them at the request of the commissioners, access to Manchester. I can't do that. That is engineering's issue, not mine. So I don't have a say in that. They wanted me to eliminate the use of vinyl siding on the houses. Vinyl siding and brick is what's selling in our other neighborhood. People want maintenance-free homes. We are dictated by the market. This is what the market's telling us. They wanted me to eliminate the 50-foot wide lots. To make my price points, to make this project work, I need that type of density. And it's only 58 of the 354 of them. So we could do it. Provide a clubhouse and pool. I'm going to be on the hook for $300,000 traffic signal. I have no clue what the entrance at Manchester is going to require. And then you putting a pool in at $350,000 plus the clubhouse, you got to charge these homeowners the dues to support that. So you got to bring that up to at least $1,000 a home. So we couldn't fill with that. We are providing the walking trail with the gazebo and some benches and places for people to meet. And the one gentleman asked for an inspired or inspiring entrance, which we normally do. If you've seen any of my entrances, I designed them. So I don't think they're that bad. I want to leave you with a couple of numbers. Okay, 2021, the total number of single-family residential building permits, 2,942 total. Columbia County had 1,117, or 38% of that total. Aiken County had 1,529, 52% of that total. Richmond County, 296, 10%. Of that 10%, of those 296, my company was responsible for 169 of them. That's 57%, my company. Okay, 2022, permits dropped to 2,259. Columbia County went down to 836, that's 37%. Aiken County's at 1,039, that's 46%. Richmond County, 384, that's 17%. These are numbers from your department. I'm not pulling them out of thin air. And out of the 384, my company was responsible for 151, or 40%. You're trying to fit things in because of past things that happen. You have neighborhoods that have one entrance. You got landlocked properties. We're trying to do what we can. I do not, you can take a look at any one of my neighborhoods. Hey, go to Haines Station. There's 50-foot lots there. Southampton, right now, is the best-selling neighborhood because of that price point. That's really all I can say. If you don't want the project, that's fine. If I'm not going to get the variance in 2 weeks, vote it down right now. Just do that, because that's what I got to do next.
Thank you, sir. Now, Wait just a second. I'm gonna give this an opportunity to go through our queue right here. I'm gonna give you a chance, but just give me a minute, okay? All right. First, I'm gonna recognize the Commissioner from the 10th, Commissioner Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I had a great pleasure talking to the president of the Neighborhood Alliance 45 minutes before I made it to this meeting. It was my understanding by listening to him that he did not get a phone call back, but he was good with everything as long as the zoning does not change and it stays at R1A. So I'd like to ask Ms. Delaney, how is that possible? Because if you build in residential houses, it's got to change from agriculture.
So the rezoning is to accomplish the goal of building residential, and it does need to change from our agriculture, because there's two different zones there. It does need to change from agricultural and R1. It's not R1A or R1AD, it's just R1 right now, and then agricultural. R1 right now requires a lot to be, I want to say 80 feet wide. So 100 feet wide. I'm sorry.
R1 is 100 feet wide.
Right. And for reference point, we don't have a single lot in Cambridge that's 100 feet wide. So,
right.
The Cambridge subdivision, if you take out the corner lots, of course.
Ms. Delaney, as far as underneath this R1 or what they are requesting, does that include apartments or townhomes, et cetera?
No, because we allow zoning by conditional. R1D is for single-family detached, and we have conditioned it that it stay detached families. So there is no special exception or anything like that within this recommendation to the full commission for approval.
All right, so as the developer wants to put that in, he cannot, is that correct?
That is correct. He would have to come back through Planning Commission and the full commission.
I believe your questions will hopefully satisfied the request of the Neighborhood Alliance gentleman. And I'll make a motion to approve this agenda item.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. We're going to work through the queue first before we vote. Commissioner from the 5th?
Yes, Ms. Delaney, please. You say that the zoning has to change in order for this project to happen?
Yes.
Okay. I know there was some contention about the width of the lots, and you're saying all of these lots will have to be at least 50 feet wide?
Yes, and with the exception of once you get into the cul-de-sacs and the curves, those are going to run short in the front, and then they balloon up in the back just because of the nature of the circle.
Yeah. And, sir, you saying even the 50-foot lots are going to be what, 300,000, 250,000, what?
They'll average anywhere from around 250 to 290.
Okay. Question to you about if we approve this, and he would have to go for the variance. So variance would come back to you, planning and zoning?
That is correct. That would go through planning department, it would be heard at planning commission, and then it would come to you.
Okay, and the ordinance says 4, he can go as low as what? 3? 4?
4 is the requirement, the minimum.
It's a requirement. If he gets a variance, he can go as low as what?
Whatever the full commission gives him a variance to.
So we have to tell him what
We will
variance.
make a recommendation at that time when he.
Oh, you'll come back?
Right.
Okay.
And once he makes a recommendation, it is at the full commission's discretion whether to grant what he's asking for or what we're recommending or something other.
I got you. And I have to say that with a heavy heart, and we got a lot of folks in here, we need the housing in Richmond County.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm coming to you. Just give me a second. Commissioner Pulliam from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Director Delaney, the neighborhoods that are surrounding, what is the average size of those lots?
0.31 acres. So you're looking at 4 units per acre roughly, somewhere in that.
So that's comparable to what they are doing?
Is it comparable?
Yes.
If you look at what the actual size on the ground is, yes.
Okay.
It's not a huge departure by any means.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner McKnight from the third.
I've got what I need. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mason, we're coming to you, and then we're gonna then to Commissioner Lewis. Commissioner Mason.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. Don't move there. If I can get traffic and engineering, somebody from traffic and engineering to traffic and engineering.
I don't think. Is
Hello?
anybody here? Not here.
Traffic. I'll do it. Okay, so my point for doing that or wanting to do that was because the fact that Joe, Mr. Galino, when the neighborhood is asking for it not to go through Manchester Drive, and I can certainly understand that for those that live in there. My daughter lives in there, but the fact of the matter is that we, as a government, I guess, have made it mandatory to go through Manchester, right?
We didn't make it mandatory. It's adjacent parcel.
It's adjacent parcel.
So it just follows.
Well, it would make sense based on, yeah, I get it. But it would be hard for the neighborhood to get that and to really understand, what that's all about. So what that will do, in essence, and really the reason why we're here, in my opinion, which is the biggest issue, is the fact that there's going to be a lot of traffic that's going to come down Manchester Drive. And that is something that I would hope that we as a commission could do something about. I'm for the project. And let me say this very, very clearly for those of us that live out in South Augusta, and Cambridge used to be one of the areas that I represented. We need the housing out in South Augusta so that we can get the commercial and retail development that we need for the restaurants and everything else. So it all works hand in hand. So I need for you guys to really understand that for sure. Now, the thing about the traffic, that's an issue. That's a lot of vehicles that would be coming through there. So my thought process is, if we could do something about the traffic as it relates to Manchester Drive, and we as a commission ought to be able to do that, and we'll take care of that for Manchester Drive, we can push this project on and we can keep this thing moving so we can build up, especially South Augusta, so we can get the things that we need. So I don't know what we need to do to take care. That's why I was asking for traffic, because we can make the decision that it does not go down Manchester Drive.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner.
Can I respond to Mr. Mason?
Wait just 1 second. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go to Commissioner Lewis.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think in dealing with this complex issue of this development and talking with my constituents, and I think the major portion of this whole issue was the traffic. And it has always been the traffic. They don't want to be burdened with so many vehicles in that small area of thoroughfare and them having to deal with it. So I think that's the main issue, and I think Commissioner Mason hit the nail on the head. I believe that the development, the project in which everyone can agree on this dais that we need housing in South Richmond County. But how we're going to get there is what we need to figure out by way of this traffic. Mr. Delaney, I have no problem with the development. 350 houses will certainly help the tax digest of Augusta Richmond County. It would help us tremendously. But I think the main concern of your neighborhoods, well, and I'm not so big on 1,600 square foot houses. I think that our Director Delaney said that there are some lots in Cambridge that are the same size that you're proposing to build. So that's no problem with me. That's no problem. But if we can mitigate or we can deal with this traffic issue, I think we have a solid project that we can deal with. So My constituents says no, and I don't know how my colleagues will vote on this matter, but I will have to live with my vote with my constituents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Young man, if you don't mind, please. For the record, state your name and address. And you have about 2 minutes. It's 3 minutes.
My name is Les Morton, 4708 Broad Oak Court, Augusta, Georgia, 30906. You know, the issue is getting confused. There are 2 issues here. One is, of course, engineering. Well, the other one is, from what we understand, Beasley Homes is proposing to put in 354 workforce housing. Now, workforce housing is the political name for Section 8 housing. So there's no ownership. This is Section 8 housing.
Sir, we're not here to discuss Section 8. We're here to discuss this matter, if you don't mind, please.
We were talking about the development, I thought. But anyway, we're asking to not approve the R1D zoning and to keep the R1 zoning. And the purpose of that is there are restrictions in R1D zoning. For instance, you know, the minimum lot size is 45 feet. You can go up to 2 stories. Now, 12-1B states that single-family dwellings in groups of 2 join together, which means that if Beasley Homes decide, after this is approved, that they wanted to put in some duplexes, they can without going back to the zoning board and asking for a special exception. In R1, the minimum lot size, R1, is conducive to R1A, which means that the lot sizes can be 80 feet wide. But there are some other special exceptions that's automatic in your permit. For one thing, people can have a home office. They can have a daycare center with special exceptions. They can have a computer business, but they can run a business from that particular home. In R1D, you cannot. Now, true, I don't know whether South Richmond County needs more housing or not. We have 110,000 people now. The infrastructure needs to be upgraded in order to continuously to have these subdivisions. So we are asking that this body of commissioners vote not to allow zoning of R1D, but to keep R1/R1A because they are together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The chair is going to recognize young man, the applicant.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mason, we had done a preliminary traffic study that engineering requested. We found that about 30% of this neighborhood would go through Tobacco Road. All right, just so you know that. John could probably elaborate. Also, if you haven't been into Cambridge and gone down Manchester, you can see that there's an actual stub-out street. Rusty Nordell was going to develop that as part of Cambridge at one time. It just never happened. It's got 4 or 5 bollards going up. That's where we would make that connection. So the only real part of Cambridge that's impacted is that road from those people that may come down. John has also talked about a traffic signal that should mitigate any of the issues or of any traffic backing up. That's all I can tell you is what he said.
Hey, order, please.
That's what he said at the last meeting.
Order, please. Order, please. Order, please.
Part of Manchester is a long run before you reach the actual entrance. So you do have I didn't measure it, but from Tobacco Road there's like what I would call a spine road before you get to the actual entrance, I believe, to Cambridge. I don't know how long that is. I apologize, I don't have that info, but that also will help any possible backup.
Thank you, sir.
Do what you have to do.
I appreciate it. So, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and we have a second. I think we're prepared to vote.
I'm in the queue, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Commissioner from the first.
Thank you, sir. Just have a quick question for Director Delaney. Can you clarify what workforce housing is for the record?
Workforce housing is a term that's being used in general to talk about price points from about, I would say, 175 up to 275. It is a very large range. It is not geared towards a specific person. It is just in general.
Is it Section 8 housing?
It is not.
Okay, thank you.
Section 8 housing is separate. It is a
clarifying
voucher
that.
system. This is not that.
Thank you for clarifying that. The second question, with this R1D, the gentleman stated that they could come back and add duplexes without coming before your body. Is that true?
That is not correct. If you will look at the conditions, we gave 11. We've specifically stated that they could not do anything other than detached.
Okay, and then my final question is, can this happen with an R1 designation versus an R1D? I know we talked about going from Zone A to a Zone R1D. Can this happen with just Zone R1, or am I misunderstanding the zones?
If you did that, what they're asking for R1D, you want to take into account, and I'm trying not to get too far off the track here, the topography of the land is a challenge. So you have to overcome that topography. If you don't get the right number of units in there, your grading, all of these things will add to your cost substantially. So you balance that cost of earth moving site work against the number of units, and that's how you get to the density. I don't think that the developer would be in a position to turn all of these into 80-foot wide lots, but he would be the best person to answer that question.
Well, that's not necessary. I just have one more question, and I'm done with this. We're talking about traffic. We're talking about interests on Manchester. Is there anyone who can clarify these traffic concerns before this vote happens? I mean, we had Dr. Malik in the chambers.
So
someone?
I know Dr. Malik just stepped out, but the level of service without putting anything else on Manchester Drive already is, if I'm not mistaken, a D or an E. It's on a scale of A being the best, F being the worst. They're already in their current state at a D. If you add a traffic signal, you move them up to a B. So with that being said, that will manage and mitigate some of the traffic. So that is what has come from our traffic engineer. He has presented it to the Planning Commission too. So with that being said, the traffic, and this is just if you did Manchester, if you did the development plus 2-3 other access points, and you kind of absorb the issue. The other thing you want to keep in mind is, as we conditioned it, the Planning Commission conditioned it, they will start the development at Windsor Spring Road. It will not start off of Manchester. So your development and your smaller lots are on the Windsor Spring side. Everything adjacent to Manchester Drive and Cambridge subdivision are your large lots, 75-foot, 80-foot wide lots. So it is going to be complementary in size, everything adjacent to Cambridge as proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Question has been called. Madam Clerk, there is a motion and then there's been a second. Before we vote, I just want to remind the members of the audience that we're here to be respectful. We ask that there be no outbursts. Just be respectful of this process, as this is going to be a roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Franham?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Guilfoyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Mason?
I have to be counted as an abstention. I have a conflict of interest. My family lives in there.
Ms. McKnight?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Pulliam?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Scott?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams? Yes, ma'am. The motion fails 4-5-1.
Madam Clerk, we're going to call for a 5-minute recess as the chamber clears. Thank you guys for being here today.
Yeah.
That's not good. Sets these.
Developers will stop coming. They ain't coming back.
All right, we got about 2 minutes.
Oh, it cleared everybody out.
Yeah, that's what I said. And I told them that. I told about it in the day, which way they go. All right, let's get these people in here. Let's finish this last one. Let's get this last one. All right, everybody go. Let's go. All right. Let's get this last one. All right. Let's get it done. Let's get it done. Hey, baby. Everybody back in. Let's go.
On that, so when I come out, just make sure to be here. Okay. You said, yes. Thank you.
Let's go, guys. 29. We got one more. One more. We got one more. No, we got 29, right?
Hey, Jazzy Jazz.
Is that it?
I'm good. How you doing, man? Good, good.
Madam Clerk.
Yeah.
28, that's right. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, Madam Clerk. Commissioner from the 5th, can we get you to come back on the dais so we can go home? Commissioner from the 5th. All right, let's go. We only got one more agenda item. Madam Clerk, I call this meeting back to order. Yeah.
Item number 28. This matter was requested to be pulled by Commissioner Pulliam, is to consider for approval the item as listed.
Commissioner Pulliam.
Mr. Mayor, I thank you so much. I've actually had my question answered, so I make a motion to approve.
We'll have a motion and we have a second. Let's see, no one in the queue. Madam Clerk, let's vote.
Okay, Mr. Franham, out. Mr. Garrett.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Guilfoyle.
Yes, ma'am. I think we just want to hold.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mason.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pulliam.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams. All right, that motion carries with Mr. Franham out.
Is that all our business, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir, it is.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys for being here. Have a great day.
$30. The affidavit? Huh? No, that's not the minutes. The minutes was under consent. Okay.